Hi, today I just want to introduce some issues with tariffs and dispute resolution. I'm going to give you two examples. This video is a very short overview. We can't really get into some of the technical issues. I just want to start the subject, start talking about the subject. And by the way, you can find several, and there's a lot of them on YouTube that address the issue in more depth. But of course, with what I do, I really kind of want to look at the authority / the power structure. So what is a tariff? A tariff is a type of tax. It's generally an import. It can be an export tax. It's on goods and is paid generally by the importer, which more than likely will pass that on to the consumer. So what are they used for? Well, they can be used as for a source of revenue. They're usually import duties. That's a form of regulation. So they can control foreign trade, and it helps them, the government, control policy to a certain extent. I mean, they've been used for a wide variety of things in the past. So, the burden is generally placed on foreign products to encourage or safeguard domestic industry and sometimes even morality. They try to regulate with tariffs. Also, are tariffs protectionism? And therein lies one of the issues of a dispute. Yes, they are protectionism. Opponents argue that protectionism policy reduces trade and adversely affects the consumer. In general, like I said, they pass the cost on to the consumer. And that's why you see the cost of things going up when you start seeing tariffs. And by the way, other countries have the option to also introduce tariffs. So you get this tit for tat thing. You raise a tariff on us, we'll put one on you. So it also, as well as the producer and workers in the export sectors, both countries implement different types of protectionism policies. And the countries where they're at, it's generally again, to protect the domestic production. A long time ago, there was a tariff. Japan put a tariff on the United States on oranges. But what generally happens if the tariff is too high, the importing country generally finds a different market. And case in point with that was, we used to export most of our grain, our wheat, to China. Well, China found another market that was cheaper because of the tariffs in Argentina. And I don't want to get into the bailout with Argentina, but that's another issue. And it causes, there's generally, when we have these tariff disputes, there's a lot of other issues that come up, so there's a consensus with most economists that protectionism has a negative effect on economic growth and economic welfare. And, a lot of people have talked about this, and it kind of discourages companies to innovate and upgrade because they're protected. They don't really have to worry about putting that money into upgrading. So if tariffs have a negative effect on both parties, and why implement them? Remember, I always have said in most of my videos are about power structure, and power is a currency of a dispute. And tariffs are means for one country to gain power over another country. So is that sustainable? Historically not. Ronald Reagan, President Reagan, was a true conservative Republican, and in 1987 speech, he talks about tariffs end up hurting the people that they originally set out to protect. And you can see his speech and many other speeches on YouTube by searching Ronald Reagan about tariffs. That was the title of a couple of them, that you can find all kinds of stuff. Generally what we want, and we set out some international rules and stuff on trade, so that we have an open free market. Tariffs take that away to a certain extent. So let's examine the power structure by who in the U.S. has authority to issue a tariff. So the first, and I'll call this dispute one. This is I have two examples here, and this will be the first example, dispute one. It's the Constitution versus presidential power. Well, Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution vests the power of tariffs to collect tariffs with Congress. Okay, and it's the House. The House is the purse, and the House has taxation power. The Founding Fathers intended for the legislative oversight on taxation and tariffs and related financial matters being viewed as more of a strategic levels to be used with caution and prudence. The Trade Expansion Act of 1962 and the Trade Act of 1974 further evolved the delegation of authority. These allowed the president to act on national security concerns through tariffs as, to respond to unfair trade practices. However, the delegation is not unchecked. For instance, Section 232 of the 1962 Act enables the president to impose tariffs if imports threaten national security, but it is bounded by specific findings and processes. So you have to really define your national security issue and why the domestic industry has not upgraded. We've had, for a long time, we had problems with steel because the steel factories back in the 70s, they didn't upgrade. And so Japanese firms pretty much took over the market for a long time. So the Supreme Court has emphasized that any delegation of powers must include an intelligible principle, and that's what we're talking about. Those are the bounds. You have to direct and limit the president's use of the authority. While the president can negotiate and respond to immediate threats, immediate is the key word there. The imposition of generalized tariffs still requires congressional approval. And the Constitution is supreme over any act. Because the Constitution gives the legislative branches the authority to issue acts. So it's, and this is reinforced by the separation of powers fundamental to the constitutional republic. So we have a dispute created by competing authorities. So resolution of this type of dispute will most likely be settled by the Supreme Court. And you will need to stick around for the results of that one because the Supreme Court has, to my knowledge, has not heard that. So, again, so which one has more authority? And this is what the Supreme Court's going to be looking at, or should be looking at. And that's the authority of the Constitution. And again, the Constitution is supreme in that of a congressional act due to its foundational roles in establishing the structure and principle of the U.S. government. The Constitution created a system of checks and balances along with the three branches, ensuring that no single branch, the executive or the legislative or the judicial branch, has more authority than the other one. So that kind of levels things out. But the authority is subject to the constitutional limits. And that's the checks and balances. It's placed upon it by the executive and the judicial branch. So they kind of check and balance each other out. So that is a dispute that you should watch. And I know that you're going to see a lot of YouTube videos and you can search throughout YouTube and find all kinds of good sources, and both national and international. Because remember that if you put a tariff on one country, that country can put a tariff on you. So dispute two, and we talk about the World Trade Organization. So the World Trade Organization is the only global international organization dealing with the rules of trade between nations. And they have a lengthy set of rules of which you go through if you have a dispute. It's at the heart of the WTO's agreement, negotiated and signed by a bulk, not all countries, but a bulk of world trading nations, and ratified in their parliament. The World Trade Organization is huge. I would advise you to go on their website and you spend several hours going through and being well educated. This is not a simple process. This is a very lengthy process. It has a lot of rules and regulations that you have to follow, and that sets a balance, and that's the purpose of it. So the goal is to ensure that trade flows as smoothly, predictably, and freely as possible. Tariffs upset that process because you can't, you can never determine when someone's going to put a tariff on you and what, if they change the limit going back and forth. Okay, so that's, but the World Trade Organization has many roles. It operates as global trade rules. It acts as a forum for negotiating trade agreements. It settles disputes between its members, and it supports the needs of developing countries. Now, having said that, we have to look at the authority, and that authority is set by a treaty. And those are the treaty countries that agree to this. If you're not there, if you're not part of the treaty, you don't have to technically agree with it. But you want to be part of that treaty because it brings trade into your country and helps you develop your country. In December of 23, WTO members referred 621 disputes. So this is something that happens a lot to the dispute settlement body. These were referred to. These are countries against country, sovereignty against sovereignty, which somewhere in the neighborhood of like 350 have gone forward to judicial adjudication by the panel, and which is their appellate body. So the administration of Donald Trump embarks on distinctive trade policy characterized by willingness to challenge the established global framework, notably the World Trade Organization, and its meticulously negotiated tariff structures. This is what you'll hear a lot about. This approach is dubbed America First, and it's manifested in the unilateral imposition of tariffs on both allies and adversaries. For a long time, we've got a lot of tariffs and embargoes and stuff on Russia. And so because of the war and all the other, it's a good power tool to get someone to the negotiation table. And that's what several administrations have tried to do in that typical event. We have to have this balance between the nations, and that's what the World Trade Organization tries to do. If you, say a major power like the United States objects or to the dispute, or to the resolution, then it goes on until they get a satisfactory result. So this is all I have today. Please leave your comments below, and if you will like and subscribe the content that I have here, that's great. I would like to try to set up every Friday I will try to get a video out so we can talk about other things, other types of disputes. But this is going to go on. So we're going to talk more about this because it's not going to go away soon. But that's what I have today. Thank you for your time, and see you next time.